Well, you know, first of all, I want to thank the city. I think the city realizes the challenges we have as a school system, and I know the challenges they're having right now dealing with recovery like we are. But I think one piece in this whole process that's been forgotten is the great job that the teachers and administrators and support personnel are doing at these schools. And right now they're overwhelmed like they've never been before. And so I know with the fact, and I think the general will agree with me, we have not had any discussions about turning the city schools into charters. I mean, there were discussions before the storm,
right.
And some people were talking about that, but there has been no meetings, no emails, no discussions turning it into a charter. So I'm not sure how that blossomed into a news story. I do want to share with you that I have all the admiration and faith in the mayor. I talked to Greg this morning on the phone. He's out of town, and he didn't know anything about what was going on with this conversation, whatever, because like I said, there hasn't been a conversation. And so we want to put that to rest. I mean, I don't know what you want to say about it.
No, I think when we look at it from the city's perspective, as the school system is being challenged with new constraints that they're having to deal with, new funding restrictions, and all of the new challenges associated with the storm, so too is the city of Panama City. And I think that what we are trying to do is respect the role and purpose of the Bay District school system. They are fundamentally chartered with ensuring that the highest degree of education.
That's not the best word to use.
What's that?
Fundamentally chartered with.
Well,
chartered. That's what started see, people use that word and they get it all mixed up and tangled.
So their mission, how's that? Is
responsibility.
And core responsibility is to educate our citizens, our youngest of youngest, all K through pre-K actually through vocational technical training at Haney Votech. And so we trust the Bay District school system and the leadership of the board to do that which is right, not only for the county, but certainly the city of Panama City. And I think we have mutual respect for each other. We have dialogues. We haven't had formal meetings, but we have continuous dialogues wherever we go, talking about ideas of how we can do things better. For example, the city of Panama City, we're looking at instituting a brand new policy that allows our employees to join into the mentorship program while they are working. So 3 hours a month, they'll be freed up from their core duties to go and partner with the Bay District school system.
And we've been talking about that for a long time.
We have,
awesome.
And now we're coming to fruition on that. And so there's a lot of ideas have been seeded, and now we're starting to see them germinate to fruition.
And there was some questions about a process when there were meetings. Not long after the storm, I believe you hired a firm to come together and to, make recommendations, look at how the city and the school system can work together and solve problems. We're going to give you a copy of those recommendations, and they go from everywhere from providing wraparound services to the students, maybe the city paying for superintendent would work, assistant superintendent would work directly with the city schools. And so those are all just recommendations, but nowhere in that plan is charter schools mentioned. I mean, it's nowhere in the plan. It talks about the challenges the city schools have that are much greater than any other schools in the area. The kindergarten readiness, and we've got a copy of that for you too, just shows it is literally a miracle what those teachers and administrators do in those schools where the challenges are the greatest. And those schools, and not all of them, but some of them have extremely difficult situations. But you look in one of our greatest success stories in the city, and I know that the general's proud of it, is Cherry Street Elementary. You look at Cherry Street, I mean, they have come so far, and I know that the leadership at Jinx and Lucille Moore and Bay High and all the schools, St. Andrew's School, I mean, all these schools are working very hard every day to make those schools successful for those kids. See, we tend to forget the kids are the most important thing here. This isn't about what an adult wants. It's about what the kids need and how do we go about providing that need. And I talked to William Harrison a little while ago, and William and I go as far back as Little League Baseball. And I love and respect William, but I disagree with him on some things. We're not politically aligned in misaligned in too many things, but this is one. The charter school idea is not going to solve any of the problems that the schools in the city have. And I'll tell you this, how many charter schools are in the city of Panama City? I bet you don't even know that answer.
I think there are 4.
There are 7.
Okay.
There are 7 charter schools in the city of Panama City in all. And now it's a trick question because some of them count 3 times.
I got you.
But if you look at those charter schools, some of them are very successful, some of them are challenged just like ours are. But we're right there with all of them. Our students are just as successful in almost every one of those charter schools as a charter school. There's a charter school right now that has 25 to 30% emptiness right now in the city, right in the middle of the city, that's been operating for years, and they do a great job. They're no better, no worse than any other school, but they have empty seats in it. So I'm not sure what's brought on the charter school idea again. Like I said, we haven't been meeting on it. This is the first conversation we've actually had about it being brought up, but there's all kinds of data and information out there. There's all kinds of need. So many of our students have housing needs and mental health challenges because of the homelessness. Now, the homelessness is not an issue just of the city. It's all across the county. I mean, everywhere I just left the Navy base, and I asked them some questions, and they had no idea, comparing that side of the bridge to this side of the bridge, the data and the statistics of how bad it really is over here for many of our citizens. Our citizens on this side of the bridge are hurting. But we know it's going to build back. Each day gets better. Each day that I see new construction or tear down of an old building, I mean, I thank Mark for expediting that. And they are doing an amazing job pushing to get those old buildings torn down and the new ones started. Housing is the thing that can't happen quick enough. I want them to build a housing area for teachers so that the teachers can work in the city schools. We've talked about that. I mean, that was, I don't know, when that whole report was being done, we talked about
last summer.
But I respect what the city, the challenges they have. They have more challenges than we do, I believe. And I know they're working hard on all those. And I believe they trust us to take care of education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about trying to change the outcome of the performance of kids and elevating it, continuing to pursue excellence, that it's got to be a commitment on behalf of Bay District School System, and it's got to be a commitment from the city. It's got to be a commitment from parents to be involved in that entire process. And so we are looking at this holistically. We've got to start at birth. We need to see what we can do to help set the conditions for success for kids starting at birth, you know, and we've seen some great efforts over in Pensacola where just a small investment, literally with a brand new newborn, you can start having a positive impact on the outcome. I've talked to Mr. Studer over there, Quint Studer, who has done this, and they have seen remarkable results. So we've got to start early. We've got to have a consistent commitment of all of those 3 entities throughout the entire education process if we fundamentally expect a different outcome. I know this, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. And now, more than ever, is the time for us to start doing things differently to achieve a different outcome. I know from the city's perspective, we're doing that. We're changing a lot of things, we're proposing ideas, and we're partnering with the district to be able to achieve those those. And we'll continue on with that.
And because you want to help students, and I want to help students. Yep. And I think people don't realize that, you know, those early years in those students' lives are formative. Yep. And set the trail for success. And so, and we've got this handout to you. It's got all the elementary schools on it, and there's a requirement in the state of Florida that when they start kindergarten, you have to do a readiness for kindergarten test. And so I'm just going to flat out, we're going to give you the numbers, I'm going to flat out and tell you right now. The readiness for kindergarten, and this is before we get involved or they get involved. So this is just where they are when they come to us right off the bat. This is why I brag on the teachers. At University Academy, their readiness, below readiness is 13%. So only 13% of their students are not ready for kindergarten. The average in between Lucille Moore, Cherry Street, and Northside ranges anywhere from 60 to 70% are not ready for kindergarten. So stop and think about that for a minute. You've got teachers busting their butts to help these kids get to that next level, as you said, to get them through to career or job or whatever. And so when those students come to those classrooms and they're that far behind, it is an enormous responsibility those teachers have. And they're doing an amazing thing. Stop and think about that again for a minute, though. Cherry Street is 62.5% of their kindergartners are not ready for kindergarten. 62.5%, and they're an A school. What have they done? Between the kindergarten year and the fifth grade year, they have busted their butts to make that school successful. And you can thank the parents for supporting the teachers, the support staff, the administrators. But Lucille Moore's doing the same thing. Northside's doing the same thing. They're all working very hard. And I think with the partnership with the city to provide more resources, and I love the initiative of trying to help those kids from birth on to get ready for school. The parents need to read to their kids. I mean, if that just happened alone, if parents spent 15 minutes a night reading to their children, we would see these scores improve dramatically. And so Mark is going to make that a city law, and we're going to have that done, right? But anyway, our challenges are enormous. But again, I almost feel like they pale in comparison with what the city's dealing with. And I know infrastructure, poverty, what to do with the marina, the downtown rebuild, the construction and everything that's going on, housing, they've got enormous problems, and I understand that. And so we have not gone to them enough like we should to ask them for help, but anytime we have, they've been there. I know the feeding project that our folks took on that you guys assisted with, it would never have happened if it hadn't been for your help and your police chief. They did a great job. And the projects that we do together at Tommy Oliver Stadium, and their focus is on doing what's right for the citizens. So I think this is extremely important that we get this out there and get them to understand that we appreciate their involvement, and we look forward to seeing what they can do to help us.
Yeah, and you're continuing to put your money where your mouth is, and you look at what's happening at Bay High School. I mean, we're putting in a STEM building, we're putting in a new fine arts auditorium, so that's going to start really helping to coalesce the preparedness of our high school students as they transition into the adult mode.
And that STEM is going to be huge, and it's a year and a half behind schedule because of the hurricane. But let me tell you something so people will understand how serious we are. We would not be putting $50 million plus into Bay High School if we thought the city was going to take it over as a charter. Just stop and think about that. If I thought that was even a possibility, I'd take that $50 million and put it in other projects. And so, again, I'm not sure where this dog got started, where this race or whatever, but there is nothing to that conversation that I've been involved in, and I believe that Mark hasn't been involved in it either. So we appreciate you guys being here. We'll both be able to answer questions, but I pale in comparison to him. I hate even sitting next to him. He's just so much smarter than I am. So.
Mr. Hausfeld, you say that these conversations haven't happened, but I was told on 2 occasions yesterday that they have. I'll just read you a quote.
Not with me.
Hold on. It says, there has been conversations about a charter school and making the city a charter school system. And I want to get to the other ways that you want to improve the schools, but I was told yesterday that these conversations have been had.
Not with me.
Okay, so do you want to clarify that then?
We talked about that last year.
Before the storm. And I said that before the storm there were conversations.
So there were no conversations after the storm?
No meetings at all. None.
No. And I said that. And I think I told you that, and I also said that. Were you the one I was on the phone with yesterday?
Yeah, you didn't mention that no conversations happened before the storm.
Well, I told you I wasn't involved in any of the conversation. I don't know. And then, were you at the board meeting Tuesday?
No.
That was brought up Tuesday at the board meeting. Reverend Wood brought it up, and I told him there that we haven't had any conversations. And I did tell him, and there's a report that the city paid this firm to come in and make a report. And I was involved in meetings with that, and it covered everything from infrastructure to housing to every issue and problem in our recovery. And so that whole plan was part of what they're working on to do.
Right.
But even in that, charter schools wasn't mentioned.
So I see that this is the September 2019 report. I'm looking at the one from October, and it does have a graph comparing public schools to charter schools. Why would that be included then if it's not a part of the conversation?
I think because people wanted to see what they were like, but if you read the rest of that, you're looking at one page. Read the whole report. The whole report talks about the number one issue is not us versus them. The number one issue are the challenges those kids in the city have that the other kids in the charters don't have. And so if you read the whole report, don't look at just one page. That's what happens when you start picking things out and you don't read the whole context of it. I mean, I didn't make the report. I had nothing to do with it. There was an independent firm that was paid to do that, so.
Is that the same independent firm that
Yes.
produced this piece of paper?
Yes,
September?
yes, there's
HRMA.
100 pages to that or something on
HRMA,
it.
yeah.
Right. No, I read the one from October, so like I said, I was just curious as to why they would even mention charter schools if it wasn't a topic of discussion.
It was not a topic of discussion, anything I was involved in.
So are you comfortable with saying that considering charter schools as a possible way to improve the school system is totally off the table?
Well, I think we've got charter schools already. See, that's what I don't understand. There's 7 charter schools in the city of Panama City. So for me to say it's completely not it's part of what we have now. There are about 17% of our students in Bay County that go to charter schools right now. And so I think charter schools are always going to be a part of the conversation of people that want to talk about them. I think we have, and here's another part of this, we've lost 10% of our population since the storm. I'm talking about student population. It's 10.6% right now, and it gradually goes up. And so if someone was to say they want to open a charter school, my challenge would be, where are you going to get them from? Where are you going to get the students from? And because if you opened up a charter school in the city of Panama City, the students that are at Bay High are still going to be the students at Bay High. All you do is change the names. The students at Jenks are still going to be the students there. Now, I know the long-term plan they have for housing and to rebuild, and I think that might be where they are talking about it. If you go by University Academy, that housing development was built around a charter school. And it wouldn't surprise me if sometime after I'm retired, years down the road, somebody does the same thing. I don't see in the next 4 years a charter school being built anywhere in the city. I think that this is just Bill Husfeld speaking, superintendent of schools, from what I've seen. Maybe they have a different plan I've been involved in, but I don't think there's a need for any more student stations right now in the city. I mean, there's charter schools with empty seats right now within the city, and so I think the energy and the time that the mayor and the commissioners and Mark share with us to put on helping the kids who are already there, I think that's going to consume the next 4 years just because we're kind of busy doing everything else.
So one of the options Jenna Halligus shared with me yesterday was that they would not build a new charter school or a building, but they entertained the option or the possibility of just converting existing schools, keeping the same teachers, same students. I don't know if either of you want to comment on that.
So the city assesses education as the number one quality of life function that determines where people decide to live. And so with that in mind, we went out and sought out through an RFQ process to find a consultant to help us assess what do we as the city need to do to assist and enhance the education within the city of Panama City and to drive higher outcomes for our citizens and our young students. In that effort, we put it out and wildly advertised it for months, and we only got one response. A nationwide RFQ, and we only got one response. We sought out, as a result of that, we went up and talked to Assistant Secretary of Education, Secretary Brogan, and talked to him about how can we gain assistance from the federal level to help us assess where we are. And to his credit, he sent down his technical advisors to assist us in looking at that. We are still desirous of looking at trying to assess what does the city need to do to enhance the education and the education outcomes of the students within the city limits of the Panama City, whether they're public school or charter. Doesn't matter to me. We want the outcome to be higher. Since we did not have but one The city commission rejected that because it wasn't enough to consider. And our intent is to go back out and see if we can find others that will come help us assess education.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, Jenna had mentioned this concept of possibly, if it were to become a charter school system, maintaining the same schools, teachers.
They can't do that.
Well, before I get to that real quick.
Well, but see, you're proposing something that can't happen. They can't take our schools. Now, they can build their own, but they can't take our schools.
Right. Yeah.
So where did that idea stem from, is what I'm trying to figure out. Did that come from this RFQ?
Honestly, I don't know where that idea came. We are not legally allowed to take the facilities of the Bay District
When they
schools.
start running our schools, I'm gonna come up with an idea for the Civic Center and the marina. I mean, and I say it tongue in cheek, but I mean, you know, the challenges, and I think what the major just said is spot on. They have got to look at everything to figure out what they can do. But I think the report, and you've got part of it, but if you go back and look at that report, the suggestions are there. And it also, and I'm not even gonna tell you, I'm gonna make you read it. It tells you what the problems are. Now, with all due respect to the general, there's a reason why they only had one firm reply to it. But there's also a reason in there that tells you the challenges the city schools have that are unique to the city schools in the area right now. And the storm has made it worse, not better. It hasn't become easier. And so those challenges aren't going to go away because we want them to. We want them to. We want every student to be successful just like the city does. We want them to be able to grow in their lives. We want them to be able to grow in their future. We want them to have an outstanding career in public education. But the challenges that the students have in our schools are enormous right now. Somebody said to me the other day, they were telling me they heard somebody speak, and they said that people always talk about how our students, they wish that they could be smarter about real life and understand how real life is. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you this right now. Our students are living a real life right now, all across this county. They are living in challenges that most of you can't even imagine. And so the sad thing is that we can't do enough to help them quick enough. And it's not just the city, it's everywhere. It's Lynn Haven, Southport, Fountain, Youngstown, many of them are living in deplorable conditions. And so that's our task. While I understand the city of Panama City is extremely important and they are hypersensitive to taking care of their problems and issues, I have 26,000 students that I'm worried about, not just the city schools. And so we are working hard because we have talented teachers and administrators that are tasked with taking on the hardest job in the world right now, and that is, well, unless you're in the Senate. The hardest job in the world right now is taking care of our youngest kids and the challenges they're dealing with.
And so moving kind of on that level, Mr. McQueen, so you all are still looking then for an education consultant?
Yeah, we're going to have to modify the RFQ because obviously we didn't get the response that we were seeking. And so in that vein, we're looking to pursue that. We've got to do some assessment, self-assessment of the city. What do we need to do to change the outcomes? And that's why we're looking for a consultant to help us do that.
And some of those challenges, when you say, what do we need to do to change the outcomes, what are some of the causes? Do you think, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing in the city?
I think Mr. Husfeld's been very clear. There's a myriad of challenges that are being faced that were pre-storm challenges, clearly, and then only exacerbated by the storm itself. So, I mean, there are community challenges that need to be addressed, which the city needs to address, whether it's housing, whether it's safety and security, the infrastructure, all of those things that help to our wraparound services. But we ought to also look at, the city needs to look at what else we need to do to help. For a long time, there's not been a real close relationship between the city and the district. My assessment,
Well,
I mean, not
negative,
not
just,
adversarial.
you know,
It just
they're
was
just
like,
operating.
you go do your thing, we'll do our thing. But I think what we're striving for now is a partnership to help us get after solving this problem mutually. Because this is his problem and it's my problem.
Time out for a second, and I know some of you are going to lie. I'm supposed to do an award ceremony with the math counts. Will you reach out to whoever's over there and tell them I'll be over there as quick as I can? They're probably waiting on me. There's like 300 middle school kids that are doing a math competition,
Yep.
and I have to go over there and
Just
give
a
the
couple
awards.
more questions.
Yeah.
When we last talked about the education consultant, I know that because of that RFQ, only one response was kind of wiped off the table.
Right.
And at that time,
Right.
Jen Halligus kind of had said, we're gonna move forward with Bay District schools to come up with solutions to fix this together. You know, I know we've kind of talked about some of the solutions, I see some of them in the packet, but how do you guys plan on moving forward to, like, I'm kind of not really hearing.
I think the mentorship program, I think that they are looking at the possibility of adopting some of the schools and taking care of the landscaping. We've talked about that. Mixed use of the athletic facilities for the citizens and for our kids and playgrounds. I mean, here's something that since the storm that's really been bad. Our kids don't have as much play space and time as they used to. And again, it's just not the city. But that's huge, because if you read the studies, the mental health well-being for students, they need that. They need that space. They need that activity. And so it's been, and again, it's unfair that the city's the only one that's sitting here right now, because this is a county issue. Those kids need to have green space and play space and fields and competition and fun and all those things. And so until we get all that back, that's what I'm saying. They got more on their plate than they can handle. If they would implement everything that the firm they tasked with to come up with recommendations, I think you'd see a remarkable difference in improvement in our schools if they could find a way to help us with the recommendations they got from the first firm. And I know they've talked about that, and I've talked to Jenna and William and Greg and all of them about that. So, you know, that's the challenge.
And all of that is possible for the city to do with district schools, like some of these recommendations of the firm.
Every one of those recommendations on there, I wholeheartedly support.
So can I just get a yes or no from each of you? Not to beat a horse with a stick, but will the possibility of charter schools be an option going forward? Yes or no?
I think it's an option that needs to be considered, and that's why we need to look at it. But until we have, that's not going to happen in other words, we would never be able to implement a charter school system anywhere in the near future. And until that time, and until we prove that we can't solve the problems in partnership, I'd rather have the partnership. To be able to support our kids and to be able to pour city resources into it, just like we just talked about. These recommendations were just crafted and adopted in, I believe it's October, November timeframe. So now we're having to digest that, develop strategies, how we're going to resource
And
those.
fund, yeah, the
and
funding.
resource them. Because we already had set our budget for the year, and it was a very painful budget process for the city because we had such a decrement in property values, and we've had a loss of citizens, very much akin to what the school saw with regard to the reduction in student population. So we're going to overcome that. Is it something that can be considered? Absolutely. I think we have to put all options on the table. At the end of the day, we need to figure out what's best. But I'm not going to rush to failure. Until that happens, I'm going to continue to partner with the district school system.
And I don't get to make that decision. The board's the one that has to approve that. So, and anybody in the state of Florida can turn in an application to open up a charter school. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I don't plan on opening up a charter school if that's what you want to do. I might retire one day and open up a kindergarten place, but the answer is I'm not opening a charter school, but the district doesn't open charter schools. The district has to approve them, and that's where we come in. So if Mark or whoever walked in and they followed all the procedures for turning in a charter school application, the board would then have the final say-so on that.
And I've had sources tell me that they feel like they're not involved in conversations, just the public generally speaking.
But there is no conversation. That's what you reported, but there's no conversation.
Well,
There's
I
been no
reported it
meetings.
because I was told that there were conversations, but.
Not with me.
Nope.
That's fine, but I was told there were conversations. What I'm saying is going forward, as you plan to improve the school systems, how will the public, how will parents, students get involved in these conversations?
Well, that's a me question. We have regular board meetings. The schools have school advisory councils. I just met with the Navy base. I go and met with them, their leadership. I went to Tyndall and met with their leadership about the changes we're making out there. I go to civic groups and talk. I answer emails and reply. I answer your questions. I mean, anybody can get involved any way they want. The only changes that we're literally doing right now for next school year are the big changes we're doing at Tyndall. We've had public meetings, discussions, and roundabout ways on that. Here's the challenge we're in. We're down 10.6% of our population. When are we going to open up the schools we've closed? I'll answer that when you tell me when the population's coming back. There's no need opening up any more schools till the population comes back. And so we don't know when they're returning. And I would tell you this, he would be a better answer to that question because he'll know better than I will when the housing's coming back. When the housing comes back, the families will come back. Until that happens, I mean, you drive around and look at all the apartment complexes that are shuttered and in need of repair. That's the biggest problem we face. And it's not just the city. I hate looking at that apartment complex on 77 outside of Lynn Haven and seeing the destruction it's gone through. It's all over the county. And so that is the frustrating thing we feel. And that's what's got to be addressed. Every bit of this comes back to housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, going off of that, besides the issues that are going on perhaps with student performance, what are sort of the exterior outside challenges that students are facing that may affect their performance in the way schools are doing?
Well, I think it is housing. I think it is space for them to decompress from the stresses of the environment that we're in. In other words, having more ball fields, more soccer fields, more programming for kids. Because quite honestly, they're in a very, many children, 2,500 are still technically classified as homeless.
Over
couch
that.
surfing.
There's over 3,000.
3,000
And
now?
I'm going to give you
Okay.
some
Go ahead.
stats, and don't want to, but you asked this question, and I just didn't want to interrupt him, but the homelessness at Cherry Street's 27%, Lucille Moore's 27%, Northside's 17%, Jinx is 13%, almost 14%, Bay High is almost 18%. The University Academy is 9%, Rising Leaders is 3%. And so the homelessness is the biggest issue we face right now. Now, and Mark said this right, and I want to clarify. I understand that. This is post-storm. So we had problems before the storm. We understood that, and we were already improved. Let me tell you, Cherry Street was an A before the storm happened, and they were an A after the storm happened. We've got principals in leadership positions in these schools. We think they're taking those schools to the next level, which is what he wants. If we get those schools all to an A, charter school is not even going to be a conversation. And so we feel like we're on the right path to get that. And so, I appreciate you guys have any further questions, you can get up with me. I've got to go. Nothing is more upsetting than for me to have middle school kids waiting on me. I've got to get over there. They've got that award ceremony.
Mr.
Okay.
McLean, would you be able to answer any of those?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks, appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Sorry, I was just over there.
No.
I know they want.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got,
Are you coming over there?
Yes.
do I need to give you a police escort?
Yeah. No, I'm just driving through the park.
Okay. Yeah, so, anyway. Anything else?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
several. So, a lot of the things that you're mentioning are solutions
Yep.
to problems.
Mhm.
Pre-storm and post-storm, I guess I'm just asking, like, what was the need to have the education consultant? What are the concerns? What are the problems in
Well-
Panama City schools?
Well, I think that Mr. Husfeld alluded to it earlier. It's when you start looking at performance levels, we need to raise that up within the city of Panama City. And so there are a lot of issues facing our kids, as we've alluded to, whether it's a housing issue, whether it's a home issue, whether it's a health issue. I mean, there's a myriad of things that are impacting our kids and their readiness to be able to perform and do well. From the city's perspective, we need to be looking at all of those things that we can do in our wheelhouse and the levers that we can pull to help create a more positive environment for those kids to succeed.
Okay, and I don't know if you can answer this or Sharon, I don't know. I guess I'm asking in the status of all of the Bay District schools, are Panama City schools kind of lower on the list? Is there a way I could get a list, a ranking of them?
Well, we've included in the packet that we gave you just some data about the city schools and the charter in the city. I think that overall, I mean, the homelessness, Panama City has some high pockets of poverty. Poverty is everywhere, yes, but Panama City has some particularly high pockets of poverty. The poverty rate in Panama City, according to the U.S. Census, is 22%. Across the bridge, it's 5%. So that's making a huge difference in that concentration and cluster of kids coming from poverty. If a third of your school is registering as homeless or displaced, those are challenges, and for whatever reason, geographically, there's just this pocket in Panama City
Panama City.
that everybody knows is there, and it's spread everywhere as well, but it's clustered in these 5 schools.
Yeah, that density is
that
there.
are the elementary schools feeding into the 1 middle school, feeding into the 1 high school, where you have 60 to 70% of the students coming to kindergarten not ready, as their peers are across the district. So at every school, you're gonna have kids not ready. But if 70% of the kids, like at Lucille Moore, are early emergent and not ready, that's going to have an impact on what they do in kindergarten. And so it's just a cluster in Panama City. But the big issue is poverty, and that census data indicates, I mean, there's a lower percentage of home ownership in the city, which would indicate that more people are renting. There's a lower price per house. The houses are cheaper. It's an ongoing thing, and it was an issue before the storm. I mean, you guys were working on those things and how to position the city to attract new
This is
businesses.
pre-storm
Right.
census, I guess, is 2010.
Right,
census, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, 20, April, it'll be the next census,
Yeah.
so,
Kind of need that.
yeah. And we need everybody to participate in that census. It is absolutely critical that that
Yeah, I guess,
happen.
I mean, the census is kind of,
Mhm.
not to kind of derail, but the census and participating in the census is gonna mean
It's-
a lot to the
It's
city.
essential.
I mean,
Not just the city, but Bay County and all of our sister cities. I mean, we've had such displacement and movement of our citizenry across the area that we've got to get people to not avoid participation, but actively do participate and answer the questionnaires with regard to the census. It's vitally important.
And I think the schools in the city, any school is only as strong as its parental involvement.
Yep.
And that's key. And so I think that what is happening more often than not right now is people are struggling with their own insurance issues and rebuilding and all that kind of stuff. And those extra minutes or hours in the week to volunteer at school that were there before the storm are not there right now. It's just, they're just not. So, I mean, parental support is critical, and some schools are able to count on that, and it just so happens that for all those reasons, the poverty and all that kind of stuff, the schools within the city limits right now haven't been able to do that. So I think it's admirable that the city is stepping up and saying, we are going to try to fill the gap, and we want other companies to do the same thing, and where parents aren't able, because some of the parents of the kids at the school in the city are working 2 and 3 jobs just to pay the rent, so they can't come and volunteer, and that's really key.
So you're kind of saying that having more green spaces, having more facilities for kids to do maybe after-school sports and stuff, that kind of stuff would help ease that problem.
Absolutely. And mentoring programs and all of those things that help to enhance and support those kids, because as Ms. Mahalik has just shared, I mean, we have a number of single parents out there that are working 2 or 3 jobs that need help. And we've got to step in that gap. And that's what the city's going to do, and we're asking other companies and businesses to participate as well. Think about, and citizens, to participate in the mentoring program, to involve themselves in kids. Otherwise, kids are going to be isolated, they're going to have a sense of abandonment, and have to overcome struggles that we never had to face as kids when we were growing up.
And the time frame for the RFQ going out again?
Yeah, I would anticipate that'll be out on the street by April. Yeah.
I don't know if I have any further questions. I don't know if you have anything else you would want to add.
I think at the end of the day, we're all about the same thing, which is ensuring that children get the highest degree of education opportunities afforded to them. It takes everyone to make this happen. We're very grateful to the district. We're very grateful to our citizens. We're grateful to our administrators and teachers who have done a yeoman's work. My wife is a teacher. I see what she's done, as well as all of her peers, and parents in the parental involvement. It takes all of us to help change the outcome of what we're expecting for kids. The city is stepping in, and we're going to do this as well. All right.
Separate thing. I just want to be possible. I know both
Yeah.
are shot. Do you want to go back to where we were?
We can do it right here.
On the marina?
Yes. I didn't know if you could just give
Do you guys have any questions about the handouts?
That'd be fine.
I might later when I get there.
Yeah, something's just.
Yeah.
I was just told to ask.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Some indicators